We had been in there for 2 hours. It was a high level of emotional tension, if that's a thing.
Okay, were people getting louder than we're speaking now?
Yes.
And who was that person or people?
Simone.
Okay. And when you were talking about Mr. Copeland not being permitted to take responsibility for the killing of Mr. Thomas, you know what I'm referring to?
Yes.
Did Mr. Copeland in any way take responsibility for that killing that day to Miss Hilton?
Pretty much, he just said, you don't know what I did or didn't do.
Okay. And that was said to the prosecutor about the killing of Donovan Thomas?
Yes.
Do you know if you saw Miss Hilton taking any notes or recording the meeting, or any of the people with her recording this meeting or taking notes?
I'm not aware.
All right. It says, and the court just gave a transcript, I don't know where it is, but you can look at it. No one's trying to trick you. It says on page 40, towards the bottom, it's the Honorable Judge.
It's fine.
If you need to look at it, if you don't need to look at it, that's fine. Just let the record reflect. It should be on page 40. If you need it, it's June 10th. It should be 2024 ex parte conference that you were part of. And Judge Glanville says something to the effect, I'm not looking at, this is not a quote, but it appears to be to Mr. Copeland. Do you remember when Mr. Love told you that as long as you don't tell a bold-faced whopper, something like that? Do you see that?
Yes.
Can you just, so the court, unless the court has it in front of her, what line that is?
I've got it in front of me.
Do you know what line that is? Or it begins on?
12.
Okay.
Well, 9, but 12 specifically, what you're referencing to.
I couldn't hear the last part.
9 is when he starts talking, but 12 is when he gets into that part.
He being Judge Glanville?
Yes.
Okay. And what information do you have that Miss Love spoke with Mr. Copeland about the bald-faced whopper?
What do you mean?
I'm sorry. Can you ask that again? Well, apparently Ms. Bumpus didn't understand it any better than I did.
Yes. Do you have any information to educate us on when Miss Love spoke with Mr. Copeland about you can't make a bald face, whatever it says, whopper?
The question itself assumes a fact that has not been established.
Sustained.
Read what it says, if you don't mind. Since it's
Tell me what page we're on again.
40.
Okay. Thank you.
The state can still give you immunity. They can give immunity to whoever they want, okay? And they can make that choice. I don't even make that choice. So if they, like I said earlier, they want your testimony, they figure it's that the jury needs to hear what you have to say, good, bad, or indifferent. And what Ms. Hilton is telling you is just the truth as you know it. And let her worry about, I mean, even though you may have said different versions of whatever, that's for impeachment. That's not going to get you in trouble. What will get you in trouble is you just invoking your First Amendment privilege because you've been given immunity. Or as Ms. Love said this morning, remember, Ms. Love said, if you overtly lie about something, like if you tell a bold-faced whopper, then they can indict you on that particular charge. I mean, that particular false statement.
That part you said about, you remember earlier this morning, Ms. Love telling you about the bold-faced whopper. That's what I'm focused on. Can you tell us, were you present when Ms. Love spoke with Mr. Copeland that morning?
What's your basis?
Again, assuming facts that have not been established. The question, I believe, was, were you present when Ms. Love spoke with Mr. Copeland?
Okay, so I think that's based on the fact that what was just read out was read out. So I don't know that Judge Glanville's statement establishes that, but that's why he's asking it. So I'm going to permit him to ask that, and she can, keeping in mind that that doesn't establish that it occurred. Ask it as a more conditional question, I guess.
Do you have any information how that came about, if it occurred at all?
So the meeting was really long and a lot happened. I can't remember if Ms. Love was ever in the room at the same time as Mr. Copeland. So I don't remember them being in the room together. And if they were, they did not have any communication.
Okay. All right. Do you remember in that transcript, I have to get you the page if you don't remember, Judge Glanville handing something to you for Mr. Copeland?
Absolutely.
Can you tell this court what that was?
Which time?
Every time. So go one at a time.
So the first time, I believe he handed me a copy of the immunity order.
Okay.
And the second time, he handed me 2 statutes, one on perjury, and I think the other either on impeachment or, yeah, I think that's what it was.
Okay. Any questions, written out questions you remember being handed to you or Mr. Copeland? District Attorney's questions, was that given to Mr. Copeland?
No.
Okay, you remember that discussion?
No.
All right. I don't have any other questions. Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor.
Uh-huh. Any other defense attorney have questions for Ms. Bumpus? Okay.
Good morning, Ms. Bumpus.
Good morning.
Counselor, I want to take you back to that Monday, June 10th, 2024. When you arrived for court that day, you were arriving to represent Mr. Copeland, correct?
Yes.
As a witness?
Yes.
Okay. And where did you go when you entered the courthouse?
I came right here.
To this courtroom 1C?
Yes.
Okay. Did you ever request an ex parte meeting with the judge?
No.
To your knowledge, did Mr. Copeland ever request an ex parte meeting with the judge?
No.
Okay. How did this meeting come about?
I was down here, and when I got here, the courtroom was closed. There was no one here. And so I contacted Mr. Chamberlain, and he came down. He told me to call him when I got in the courthouse. So I called him when I got in the courthouse, and I was right here. And he came down and got me, took me upstairs.
Okay. Were you ever told why you were going upstairs?
I was never told why I was going upstairs, but once I got upstairs, I thought I was upstairs because that was the only place I could talk to Mr. Copeland.
Okay. At what point did you realize that you were being made part of an ex parte meeting?
When Brian got up there and said it.
When what? I'm sorry.
Brian.
Who's Brian?
Attorney Steele.
Okay.
Got up, and that was the first time I really realized that anything had happened, because I had been sitting there and I did not realize what was happening.
Okay.
Where are you? I thought you had just been brought upstairs to Judge Glanville's chambers.
But it was never a time where they said, oh, we're about to meet. They literally just start talking. So
Mr. Steele's there?
No, the first time I realized what had happened was when what I'm saying is.
You answer the question that I am asking you. You were in chambers with Miss Hilton and the judge. I'm sorry. There are two different parts to this ex parte. You were in chambers with Miss Love and the judge and a court reporter, and y'all had conversations, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you were aware prior to that morning that this case was being tried, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you were aware that Miss Love was a member of the prosecution team, right?
Yes.
And that Judge Glanville was the presiding judge at the time?
Yes.
And that there were defense attorneys on the other side of the case, right?
Yes.
Okay. And so when you went into the meeting, you could see that there were no defense attorneys present, right?
No, but what I'm saying is, I didn't know I was going into a meeting.
Ma'am, I understand. Answer the question I asked you. You could see at that point in time that there were no defense attorneys present in the chambers, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So at that point in time, you knew this is a meeting with the prosecution and the judge and no defense attorneys, right?
What I'm saying is,
Ma'am, answer the question I am asking you.
I didn't realize it was a meeting.
Okay, so at the point when people started talking, let's call it a meeting at that point in time. Okay.
Okay.
And so you knew that the defense attorneys weren't there then, right?
Yes.
Okay. And so you knew it was an ex parte. If you knew the term ex parte.
Yes. I
Okay, go ahead.
And in the meeting, who initiated the conversation about the purpose of the meeting? Was it you?
No.
Okay, who was it?
All right, let me ask y'all a question. I can read what's in the transcript. So unless there's, something that we're saying occurred before, the court reporter said, okay, I'm ready whenever y'all are. I don't need an exposition of who said what. I can see it, okay?
Okay. I have no further questions.
All right. Ms. Matthews.
Ms. Bombas, good morning.
Good morning.
Just a few questions for you. At any time during the meeting that took place between the court, the prosecutor, yourself, Mr. Copeland, were you ever told by the court not to disclose any of the contents of the meeting?
All right, we are not going to replow the issue of Mr. Steele being held in contempt. That is moot. So to the extent that this is going to that, move on.
Okay, that's where I was going.
All right.
Thank you. No question.
Anybody else? From the defense team side. Okay. Ms. Love, do you have questions for Ms. Bumpus?
A few, Judge, just a few. Thank you. Ms. Bumpus, you were asked by, I believe, Mr. Steele, whether Judge Glanville ever handed Mr. Copeland anything. Do you remember being asked that question?
No.
Okay. Do you recall telling Mr. Steele or Mr. Shard or either member of the defense team this morning that in the June 10th hearing, Judge Glanville handed you a statute on perjury?
Can you say that again?
Do you recall testifying earlier that during the June 10th hearing, Judge Glanville handed you a copy of the perjury statute?
You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought the question was, did he hand it to me to give to Mr. Copeland?
Do you recall testifying that Judge Glanville handed you a copy of the perjury statute? Or better yet, let me do this. Did Judge Glanville give to you a copy of the perjury statute?
And said, hand this to Mr. Copeland? Yes.
Okay. And did Judge Glanville give to you a copy of the immunity statute?
And say, hand this to Mr. Copeland? Yes.
All right. And when you responded, let me back up. So do you not recall being asked in this courtroom today, did Judge Glanville ever give to Mr. Copeland anything?
I don't recall.
Okay. Do you recall what you were asked do you recall testifying that Judge Glanville gave you both a perjury statute, copy of that, and a copy of the immunity statute?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall what question you were answering when you made those statements?
The question that I was answering was, did Judge Glanville give me something to hand me a statute or hand me anything in a meeting?
And you don't recall him asking whether Judge Glanville handed Mr. Copeland anything?
Objection. Asked and answered.
Yes. Thank you.
I'm not sure we've got a clear answer on it, but does it matter?
If she, there's a reason that I'm asking the question.
All right, well, go ahead. You can ask it again because I don't think anybody's clear on it yet.
Do you recall being asked today whether Judge Glanville ever handed Mr. Copeland anything?
Happen. I think she's for some reason asking you about the question that was asked to you on direct.
Do you recall being asked if Judge Glanville gave Mr. Copeland anything?
I don't recall.
Okay. At the time that you were called to the meeting, you already knew that Mr. Copeland had been granted immunity, correct?
Incorrect.
Okay. At the time that you assumed representation of Mr. Copeland, you were aware that he had been arrested, though, right? You knew that Mr. Copeland had been arrested?
No.
Okay. At the time that Mr. Melnick spoke with you about standing in his stead on that Monday morning, did you learn during that conversation with Mr. Melnick that Mr. Copeland had been arrested?
No.
At what point did you learn that Mr. Copeland had been arrested?
After he had been arrested.
Was that before or after the Monday morning meeting?
Objection, Your Honor. You asked us to just focus on the content of that meeting. You asked me to not get far from that, and we're far from that.
Your Honor, ma'am.
Yeah, what does this have to do with whether or not some off-the-record discussion that Ms. Hilton was privy to occurred?
Your Honor, the reason I was asking about the giving to Ms. Bumpus the statutes is that my understanding is that at the time that she was called to represent Mr. Copeland, she was not familiar with certain statutes.
Okay, well, maybe not, but that's not relevant to what we're trying to figure out here.
And so to the extent that she was asked by the defense whether Judge Glanville gave to Mr. Copeland anything, and she then responded, he gave it to me.
All right, I don't recall. I'm sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was establishing the reason he would have given her that, and I was establishing further the extent of the questions that I had for her dealt with her understanding of her responsibilities. And then finally, I was going to ask her, she'd already testified to my memory that she doesn't recall this counselor ever being in the room with Mr. Copeland, and if there was no communication.
Okay.
So I was going to...
That part seems relevant. You can ask about that.
Miss Bumpus, do you have any memory of Miss Hilton and me being in the room while you were in the room with Mr. Copeland?
I have some memory of all of us being in the room for a very brief moment of time.
When you say all of us, who is all of us?
You just asked me, do I have any memory of you, Miss Hilton, and Mr. Copeland being in the room? I remember at one point you came back, but I can't remember exactly what happened while you were there.
Is it your recollection that I was there when Mr. Copeland first came into the room?
No.
And when you say you remember that I came back, where is it that you're remembering that I came back to?
Either, I don't remember. Maybe it's when Miss Hilton came back. But at one point, all three of us were in the room.
Who's all three of us?
Me, Miss Hilton, and Miss Love.
In chambers.
In chambers.
Was Mr. Copeland in the room?
I don't remember. I just said I don't remember.
Well, I mean, it's kind of important. We're relying on your memory for certain things. So, were there deputies in the room then?
What I'm saying is, if Mr. Copeland was ever in the room with Adrian Love, then it wasn't a long, extended amount of time, and I don't think there was any communication. I remember that Simone left, and it was just me, Adrian Love, and the judge and the court reporter.
All right, so your recollection is that at the beginning of the meeting, before Mr. Copeland ever arrived for the first, when he ever arrived with the deputies, that there was a point in time when the judge, Miss Love, Miss Hilton, and you were in chambers?
There was a point in time where Miss Love and Miss Hilton were in chambers with me. I cannot affirmatively state whether Mr. Copeland was there or not, but there was at least 2 minutes of us all being there together.
Did y'all have any conversation at that time?
I can't recall because Miss Hilton was doing all of the talking. I honestly believe it was when Miss Hilton left at the beginning, when we first got in chambers, when we were in not the judge's office, but all of us were there.
Antechambers, like outside of
Yes.
chambers, but inside of the door.
Yes.
Who is all of us?
Simone Hilton, Adrian Love, me, Investigator Hamilton. Mr. Chamberlain was in and out. The judge was in and out talking to us, and
Piles of trash mail, attack ads all over TV. Why? Cori Bush is a solid
Substantive?
no, Judge.
Okay. All right, so y'all are all out where the JA, the judicial assistant, sits.
Yes,
At
Judge.
first, okay, we'll call that the antechambers, ANTE chambers. So when is it that any of you go back into Judge Glanville's actual chambers, his office?
Adrian Love says, Judge, can we talk to you for a second in chambers?
Okay, and who goes then?
Just me, her, Adrian Love, and Judge Glanville and the court reporter.
Okay. Go ahead, Ms. Love, if you had anything else.
I thank you. Ms. Bumpus, there were investigators present or no when you, me, Judge, the court reporter first went back?
I can't remember.
Do you recall a comment from either the court reporter or the judge just joking about the fact that I'm not allowed to go anywhere without the investigators?
No.
And when you say that we went into the chambers, you, me, the court reporter, Judge Glanville, was Judge Glanville's deputy there?
Yes. I guess if he's a deputy, I don't know.
Which person was there for Judge Glanville? Which sheriff's office personnel, do you remember?
No.
And where was that person situated when you, me, Judge Glanville, the court reporter went into the chambers?
I have no idea.
That person was in chambers with the 4 of us, 5 of us?
I don't remember. At some points, I don't remember about when he was walking in and out.
Okay. And by that, by he, you mean a sheriff's office personnel?
If he's a sheriff's, I don't know what he is.
Do you remember, do you have any memory of the investigator being present with me while I was in there?
I don't remember. I know there were investigators there. I don't remember if they came in chambers when you came in or after Ms. Hilton came in.
And seeing the transcript, does it do anything to refresh your memory about who all was there?
No.
Okay. And when you testified earlier that at some point after I left the first time, that Simone, me, and you ended up in a room together in chambers, do you recall testifying that way to the court just earlier today?
Yes, at one point, me, you, and Simone were in chambers together. Like I said, it was a brief moment, and I don't remember you saying anything.
But are you saying that now that was after I left the first time?
I really don't remember.
Okay. So your memory, you know that at some point you, me, and Simone are in chambers together. You cannot recall whether after I left the first time I ever came back.
I cannot recall.
Okay. And when you said, let me ask you just this pointed question. Did Kenneth Copeland ever say, I killed Nut to Simone Hilton while you were in there?
Can you ask the question again?
Did Kenneth Copeland ever say to Simone Hilton, I killed Nut?
No.
Did Kenneth Copeland ever say to Simone Hilton, I killed Donovan Thomas?
No.
Did Kenneth Copeland ever say that he killed anybody to Simone Hilton?
No.
Did he say any of those three things in Simone Hilton's presence in hearing, to your knowledge?
Can I answer that with a non-yes or no question, Judge?
With a what?
With an explanation, because he didn't say yes, or he did not say I killed, but he said you cannot tell me what I did or did not do.
Okay. That's the extent that he said?
Yes.
Okay.
When you spoke about someone asking the sheriff to turn off their body cameras, was that Ms. Hilton? Did you say Ms. Hilton told the sheriffs to turn off their body cameras? Did I hear that wrong?
You heard that absolutely wrong.
Please tell me who it was.
I clearly said Deputy Brown.
Thank you. Thank you for clearing that.
You're welcome.
Do you recall what was being talked about when Deputy Brown told the sheriff's deputies to turn off their body cameras?
Nothing. That was the first thing that he said when he walked in the room.
And at that point was Ms. Hilton, you, Mr. Copeland, judge, court reporter, and DA's office investigators all.
I'm Mike Hamra, and I'm running for governor. I was born and raised in Southwest Missouri, where my family restaurant business.
So it may have just been you when Deputy Brown said to the sheriff's deputies, turn off your cameras?
I don't remember exactly who was sitting in the courtroom.
But that's
in the
chambers, but that's possible?
It is possible.
It's possible it might have been when you and Mr. Copeland were just in there together?
It wasn't.
Well, Mr. Copeland had to have been in there, right? Because you said the deputies didn't show up until Mr. Copeland arrived.
No, what I'm saying, Judge, is that was the order as he walked in.
Right, but what did you say might have just happened when it was just you?
Nothing. I was saying I may have been the only one sitting there. I can't remember, but there wasn't like, oh, step out. It's as soon as they walked in, this is what was said as Mr. Copeland was walking in.
And was there any, did you request at that point that they brought him in to have a private meeting with your client at the time?
At that moment, I hadn't requested anything.
Is it safe to say you don't know why they were told to turn off the body on him?
That is correct.
Okay. Did you ever hear anyone from the state ask the deputies to have those body-worn cameras turned off?
No.
You testified earlier that Mr. Copeland said something akin to, I can claim all of this. Did I hear you right?
Yes.
Okay. And who was he talking to? And
Simone.
okay. And did you know, or did he ever make clear what all of this was that he was talking about?
I believe he was referring to everything that...
Wait, that's not the question. It wasn't what do you think he meant. It was, did he ever make clear?
He said everything in this case.
He said the words, everything in this case?
I don't know if those were his words verbatim, but that's what he said.
Was a court reporter there when that happened?
I don't know. This was an off-the-record conversation.
Okay, so it was an off the... So when what about his words? What words did he say that makes you now say that's what he said if you don't remember exactly how he put it?
I said I don't remember his words verbatim.
Right.
But I was there, and he said, I can claim all of this. I can take all of this. That's what we were talking about. We were talking about this case.
Okay. Is what you just testified to the extent of the words that Mr. Copeland spoke regarding claiming something?
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, ma'am. Is what you just testified about the extent of the words Mr. Copeland spoke about claiming something?
I don't want to say that is a complete lead to the extent, because he said it over and over. He said it various ways. He changed the way he said it.
Do you recall what specifically was being discussed at each of the points that he said that?
Objection has been answered.
Overruled.
Specifically, not generally, not broadly, specifically what was being discussed at each of the points where he said, I can claim all of this.
The whole conversation was about Donovan Thomas's unaliving.
Are you aware, are you familiar with any of the shootings that occurred after Donovan Thomas was killed?
No.
Okay. Are you aware or are you familiar with any allegations about any retaliatory events that occurred that the state considers a part of the Donovan Thomas shooting?
No.
At what point, what was being asked of Mr. Copeland when he made the statement that you testified, it's not just about me knowing that, it's about who was in the infinity? At what was being asked of him when he said something like that?
Nothing was being asked of him.
Okay. Did he just sort of blurt it out on his own?
Yes.
Okay.
And what he said was, I know something about that infinity that y'all don't know, and it got something to do with somebody who's not even on the case.
Okay. Did he ever make clear what it was that he knew to Ms. Hilton in your presence?
He wasn't given the opportunity to.
But what do you mean?
She continued to talk about what she was talking about.
Okay. Did she ever tell him, don't talk to me about that?
No.
So did he ever interrupt her to give her more information or to tell her what it was about the affinity that he knew?
No.
Okay. When you said, Adrian said, Judge, close your ears. Did you mean to say Adrian said, Judge, close your ears?
You?
Yeah.
Yeah, you.
Okay. At what point are you alleging, are you saying, does your memory tell you that I told the judge to close his ears?
I don't really remember exactly what was saying. I don't know if it was you and Simone in there, but something about, we were having a conversation, me, you, and Ms. Hilton were having a conversation about, I don't remember what we were talking about. And you said it, and then you said, Judge, close your ears.
And what did I say after I said, Judge, close your ears?
I don't remember.
All right, so then it's now your recollection that there was a point in time when you, Miss Love, Miss Hilton, and the judge were in there and Miss Love was talking.
Judge, I've said that she never talked while Mr. Copeland was in the room.
Okay, and you don't even remember really whether she was in there or not when Mr. Copeland was in the room.
If she was,
she Miss Love.
It was very brief, but no.
Okay, but you said before, I thought, that there was maybe a 2-minute time when you, Miss Hilton, and Miss Love were in a room together.
Yes, that's what I'm referring to.
Okay, so that was in front of also Judge Glanville? Because you just said it was, so I'm trying to get clarity.
Here's the clarity. He wasn't at the table with us as normal. He was turned around on his computer, but still inside of his office. Okay.
So when did this occur during, we have the beginning of the ex parte being Miss Love, all of y'all are standing outside in the ante room and Miss Love says, Judge, can we talk to you for a minute or something to that effect? And then Who all gets up and goes into Judge Glanville's chambers?
Simone has left to go to do something at that point. So it's just me and Adrian Love.
Okay, and who else?
And the court reporter. And she says maybe her investigator. I can't remember.
Okay. And so the three of you talk for some amount of time,
yes.
The three of you being Miss Bumpus, you, Miss Love, and Judge Glanville?
Yes.
All right. And then tell me when that changes and it becomes more or fewer of you in that room.
The first person to join us is Simone when she comes back from court.
Okay. And is that at the same time that essentially the same time that Mr. Copeland also joins you?
Maybe within a minute or so. They don't come in like at the exact.
Okay. So they come in essentially together. And where's Miss Love at that point?
She leaves when Miss Hilton comes, but she does stay for, like I said, there's a brief conversation with me, Miss Hilton, and the judge.
And the judge?
Well, in the judge's chambers. The judge is
okay.
not.
With you, Miss Hilton, Miss Love, but it's not a part of the proceedings yet because the judge didn't even pay attention. He's over there working on his computer.
Yes.
What do y'all say at that point in time?
I don't remember what the conversation
Anything of substance?
It was about maybe plea deals. I remember she said to me.
She who?
Adrian Love. I remember she says, which I can't forget this, is I don't know who's worse, you or Jacoby.
What?
That was the thing. That was the nature of the conversation.
Say that again.
She tells me she doesn't know who's worse, me or Jacoby.
Me or Jacoby?
Yeah.
Jacoby Hudson?
Yes.
What does that have to do with anything?
I don't know.
It has nothing to do with this case.
No, that's what we're talking about. You asked me what we were talking about.
Okay, so something that had nothing to do with this case.
And then something comes up about, I don't know if it's plea deals. I don't know. It was something about this case where she says, Judge, close your ears.
Okay. So this is before y'all kind of gone back on the record. The judge isn't paying attention anyway. He's in the room, but he's over at his computer. Y'all are over at his conference table. Is that what your recollection is?
Yes.
Y'all are talking about entirely other things. And then
I wouldn't say entirely other things, but we're not talking about the Mr. Copeland.
Or the case. If you're talking about Jacoby Hudson, you're not talking about the case.
No, we're talking about the case. She's talking about, I guess she's talking about the reference to me hugging people. I don't know. But we were talking about the case.
Okay. Anyway. And then at some point, Miss Love, to your recollection, says, Judge, close your ears because she wants to talk to you about a plea deal.
I don't remember exactly what she was talking about, but it was something pertaining to the case. And she doesn't want to talk to me about a plea deal because I'm not a defendant.
Right, that wouldn't have made any sense.
But she was discussing something pertaining to her. That's the 2 minutes I'm talking about.
Okay. And then what happens to Miss Love?
She
leaves. And then when do y'all go back on the record?
Immediately.
Okay.
Well, no, I talked to Mr. Copeland for a second.
Okay. Privately or? Okay. And then y'all go back on the record. And then does the record reflect everything the record reflects accurately? Other than whenever this conversation between you, Miss Hilton, and Mr. Copeland allegedly occurred?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have a copy of the transcript in front of you at this point?
Yes, sure.
Can you kind of point out where this conversation allegedly occurs?
It's somewhere around page 40.
Okay.
Between 39 and 40.
Okay.
Your Honor, could I just get, if it's between 39 and 40, are there any specific lines?
Well, it was like off the record, so I wouldn't know exactly which line it starts back at.
Okay, but you had represented previously that Judge Glanville was not in the room at that point in time.
Yes, he was asked to leave.
Okay. So him being asked to leave isn't reflected. Is that right?
Let's see.
Okay. Do you remember who asked him to leave?
Ms. Hilton.
Okay. And that's not on the record either?
No.
And you can't remember whether the court reporter stayed or left?
I can't remember whether she stayed or left, but she definitely stopped taking down.
Okay. All right. And when did you, sorry, Ms. Love, go ahead. You know what? Go ahead. I'll save my questions.
Your Honor, I honestly defer to the court. Please continue. I have no.
All right. So after this conversation concludes, then what happens? And by this conversation, I mean the conversation you referenced that is not reflected in the record, but that takes place between you, Mr. Copeland, and Ms. Hilton. What happens after that? But if it's not in the record, it's not going to be in the record. So you just tell me from your recollection what happens after that.
That's probably towards the last 5 minutes of this meeting.
Okay.
And so we go back on the record and
so finishes. How does everybody get back in the room? And how is it that y'all go back on the record? Give me the details of that.
she just we just finished the off the record conversation and just Simone just says everybody can come back in. And then okay, wait, Judge, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually
Your Honor, does the court mind if I sit?
Go ahead.
I would say that the conversation actually happened around page 46, 45.
45? Okay. And is that conversation, in fact, reflected on the record?
No, but I don't know.
I mean, so how are you sorting out, oh, it's around 45 that it occurs?
Because I try to get the conversation on the record.
What did you say? To get the conversation or to try to get the conversation on the record?
I say,
I'd like to hear it from your recollection without reference to the transcript first, okay?
I'm trying to make sure. So I just
So Ms. Hilton says, Judge, can you leave? And at that point, do you say anything? Like, no, Judge, stay, or anything like that?
no, she already told me in the hallway that she was going to ask the judge to leave and have a conversation with him.
Okay. So show me where in the transcript y'all come back from the restroom break.
Well, you want me to, you asked me to.
Now I do want you to look at the
Okay.
transcript, yes.
And have a security issue. Okay, I'm sorry. You asked.
Wesley Bell promised change, but we've just seen scandals. Bell spent $130,000.
See, if that's not in here where me getting up, I don't know how to find that.
Okay, so the restroom break y'all take, but it isn't reflected.
Yes.
Okay. Is the restroom break after Mr. Copeland's with y'all?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And it's immediately after this restroom break that you and Ms. Hilton and Mr. Copeland have the private conversation?
Yes, sure. And Judge, you asked me a question earlier that I didn't get to answer.
Okay, what's that?
You asked me, can I, without looking at the transcript, tell you how I tried to get it back on the record?
Yes. Can you give me a second before you answer? Because I'm looking for something in particular. All right, so y'all take a restroom break. You see Miss Hilton in the hall. Y'all walk back in. Mr. Copeland's gone because he's taking a restroom break at that point. The court reporter is there. Mr. Copeland comes back. The judge comes back. And that's when Miss Hilton says, oh, wait, Judge, go back out?
Yes.
Okay. All right, now what were you going to answer?
You asked me, how did I get it back on the record?
Yeah.
So after the conversation, I say pretty much, I want to get what she just told him about what he cannot go to jail for.
Okay.
Because the whole point of the off the record conversation is he's trying to figure out, can he go to jail for lying?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm trying to get back on the record that she says that she's not going to prosecute him for anything other than one thing.
Okay. Okay, and so y'all have had, the three of you have had this conversation. Judge is gone. You can't remember whether the court reporter's there or not, but then what happens?
That's what I'm saying. That's on page.
So then you say, I'd like to get this on the record, or?
No, we go back on the record.
Okay, so how does that occur?
No, she just says, let's go back on the record. Simone.
So Ms. Hilton says, let's go back on the record.
Yes.
So you don't say, I want to get this on the record.
No, I just do my best to get it on the record when we go back on record. It's in the.
Oh, I see what you mean. You say, you don't mean, I'm really trying to get this on record. You mean Miss Hilton says, all right, let's go back on the record. And then you try to like give a rendition of what occurred.
Yes.
Okay. And that is reflected where?
On page 48.
On page 48.
Well, between 47 and 48.
Okay. All right. And does page 47 and 48 reflect the off-the-record conversation that allegedly occurred between you, Miss Hilton, and Mr. Copeland?
There's a part where I say, so he can go to jail for anything but what? Okay. And okay, page 51 specifically, I'm asking, I tell him he has to make a decision. And I ask, so if he starts testifying today, is he going home today? And then I say, but if he says he don't recall to everything, he'll be okay.
Okay. Okay. So at that point, between, whatever you said, 47 and 51, y'all are back on the record, right?
Yes, Judge.
Nobody's like declining to take down what you're saying.
No, Judge.
Okay. So any time during that point in time, do you say, let the record reflect that Miss Hilton, Mr. Copeland, and I had an off-the-record conversation, and I'd like to put on the record what was said during that conversation?
No.
Okay.
And also on page 51, I say, are you saying you want to get up there on the stand and say something?
Uh-huh.
And then it's no response because he just looks at me.
Okay. All right. So does 47 through whenever that last page number was, does that accurately reflect whatever was said during the alleged off-the-record conversation?
It doesn't accurately reflect, but it does. I do try to mention what we talked about, but it doesn't accurately reflect everything that we discussed.
All right. So was there something else that you discussed that you should have said, oh, and by the way, this also happened that you didn't say?
I'm confused, Judge.
Michael, are you teaching Nathan to swim competitively?
When you're ready.
Conversation. When you're making this record, after y'all go back on the record, you said it still wasn't accurate. And you also said you weren't stopped from saying anything during that part. So what is it that you should have said that you didn't say?
Well, I guess the only thing that I should have said that I didn't say is that Simone said that she would not prosecute or move forward with any type of perjury if he said anything except for the unaliving of Donovan Thomas.
Okay. All right. All right. So when is it that you actually reviewed and read this transcript?
I really don't know. I think maybe around the time that I had to retain counsel, I think we reviewed it together, which I cannot tell you the exact date, but
sometime in late June?
Yeah, somewhere after 6/12.
Okay. And we all in this room know this to be the case, but you are an attorney licensed and barred to practice in Georgia, right?
Yes.
Okay. And as such, you have a duty of candor to the court?
Yes, Judge.
Okay. Is there any point in time after you read this transcript and thought to yourself, wow, that really doesn't include everything, that you brought it to this court's attention that the transcript was incomplete?
This court, well, there really was no court's attention to bring it to, because after all of that happened, it's been on recess for so long.
So you've been in court when we've been in session for the last week or two, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I was presiding at that point in time, right?
Yes.
Did you at any point bring to my attention that you believed as an officer of the court and a participant in this ex parte meeting that the transcript did not accurately reflect what occurred in that meeting?
Well, Your Honor, I did not bring it to your attention, and I honestly still would not, as an attorney, if I can answer this as an attorney, I believe that there is some value in off-the-record conversations for specific things, and it has always been my position, even in speaking with members of the defense, that as far as anything minus the off-the-record conversation, that the transcript is complete.
Okay. All right. So what is your answer then to my question?
Can you ask me again? I'm sorry.
Did you ever at any point in time bring to my attention your belief that this ex parte transcript was inaccurate because it was incomplete?
No.
Okay. Why is that?
Well, because of what I kind of just said. I don't believe that it was incomplete per se, minus the off-the-record conversation, but there are a lot of off-the-record conversations that are had that are not included in transcripts, and that's not unusual to me.
All right. So you don't actually believe it's inaccurate then?
No, I just think it's missing the off-the-record conversation. I'm not missing. I just think that the defense did not have knowledge of the off-the-record conversation. Not that it's missing from the transcript per se.
Okay. Because it was officially off the record. Is that what you mean?
Yes, Judge.
Okay. And did you ever, if it in fact occurred, did you ever object to it being off the record?
No, I didn't.
Okay. So at some point you brought it to the defense attorney's attention? Is that how you decided to deal with it?
I had a conversation with the defense attorney. I don't want to say I brought it to them, but we just had a conversation about what happened.
All right. Ms. Love, do you have other questions for Ms. Bumpus?
Ms. Bumpus, did you tell any member of the defense about the details of the content of the off-the-record conversation that you had with Ms. Hilton on June 10th?
That I had with Ms. Hilton and Mr. Copeland? Yes.
When did you tell them?
The same day.
Did you tell them everything you remembered about it?
I told them everything I remembered.
And do you remember how long after the conversation took place it was that you told them?
I don't know, maybe like an hour.
Was court in recess or was court in session when you told them?
Court was in recess.
Between the time that the conversation between you, Ms. Hilton, and Mr. Copeland ended, and the time that you told defense attorneys all of the details you could remember about the off-the-record conversation, was court in session at any point?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Was court ever in session between the time that you finished your conversation with Hilton and Mr. Copeland and the time you told defense? What happened in the meeting?
Yes.
Court was in session during that hour?
Had court resumed?
Correct. Did court at any time resume from the time that you left the meeting in chambers to the time that you had the conversation with defense? Just in that moment, from chambers to conversation with defense?
Oh, no.
Court had not resumed?
No.
And when you
straight down here and sat down and immediately started, so I didn't speak to anyone.
And when you were speaking earlier about when after Mr. Copeland came in and you said you weren't sure whether I was in the room, did the portion about Judge Close Your Ears occur before or after Mr. Copeland came into the room?
For sure before.
Okay. And at that point, was the court reporter taking down anything?
No.
And at that point, did the court give any indication, did the judge give any indication that he was paying attention to it, whatever it was?
I can't answer that.
Okay. Did he give any indication? Did you see any indication that he was paying attention?
I can't answer that.
Yeah, you can.
I don't know. I wasn't paying attention to him.
So no, as far as you know, he gave no indication. She's asking from your personal observation. Answer it as to that. That's what she's asking you.
I would have to say no, but I would also say I wasn't looking at him at all.
Do you remember Ms. Hilton at some point talking about the judge closing his ears at any time?
I don't remember.
And with looking at the transcript at all, refresh your memory.
I'm sure.
Okay. Would you take a look on page 26, line 5 of the transcript? And since it's a part of the record, read from line 2 to the end of line. Let me just ask you this. Do you see where Ms. Hilton says, Judge, you might want to close your ears?
Yes.
Did you hear that phrase or something like that said more than once in that meeting?
Yeah, and before Simone got there, I know exactly what I'm talking about. So are you in here at this point?
So my only question is, did you hear that phrase more than once in the meeting?
I can't remember if it's that exact phrase, but I heard you say something to that extent, and I heard her say that.
Okay. Were you the first person, to your knowledge, that brought to defense's attention that there was, in fact, a meeting in chambers?
No.
Who, do you know, do you have personal knowledge of who that person was?
No.
How then do you know that you were not the first person who brought that to their attention?
Because they asked me about the meeting.
Did they give any commentary to you that led you to believe that they knew what was said in the meeting?
Yes.
What did they tell you?
Is it true that...
Excuse me, can I object to the they?
Sure.
You know, defense attorneys, they, it's not all an all-inclusive group.
Yes, sustain. Can you be specific?
Who specifically came up to you and asked you about the meeting in chambers?
There were multiple attorneys that specifically talked to me at one time.
Would you please apprise the court of the names of those multiple attorneys?
Excuse me, objection, Your Honor. We're still far afield again of the limited subject matter that you asked me to stick to.
Your Honor, as it pertains to Brady or whatever information, I think it's quite relevant. Who knew what and when, as it relates to what was said during the meeting?
Okay, well, I don't know if it's relevant who revealed that a meeting occurred. Ms. Bumpus has said that essentially, if I understand you correctly, that at some point during the day immediately following the meeting, the day of the meeting, you had a conversation with some defense attorney or defense attorneys, and we can sort out who, where you relayed to them everything you knew and everything you recalled about what went on in the meeting, including the off-the-record conversations, right?
Yes.
Okay. You can figure out who that is now.
Thank you. Who was it? Name the attorneys that you referred to just a moment ago.
Just a moment ago with the question she asked me, Judge Whitaker?
With the one I asked.
Okay.
I mean, it's the same topic, right?
Okay, ask the question again.
Which attorneys by name first came up to you and asked you about the meeting?
See, Judge, that's two different questions.
Then answer the question Ms. Love asked you.
I don't recall, but I think Judge Glanville did judicial notice of me on camera. I don't recall.
No, my only question to you is who first came up to you and asked you about the meeting?
I don't recall everybody who was there.
Who do you recall?
I recall Attorney Steele and Attorney Adams, and I can't remember how many
lawyers were there when Mr. Steele and Mr. Adams came up to you an hour after the meeting and asked you about it. How many lawyers were there?
3, I think.
Okay. Do you recall seeing Mr. Sharp? Just throwing out names.
At some point.
Okay. So Mr. Sharp, Mr. Steele, and Mr. Adams, within an hour, is that accurate, of the meeting, came to you and talked to you about what happened in the meeting?
I would say yes.
Okay. Other than Mr. Sharp, anybody else you remember?
No.
And when they spoke with you, regardless of how they got it, did they share with you any details from the meeting?
Yes.
And what details did they give to you that they already had before you started talking?
Objection. This is not
Sustained.
Okay. Last couple of questions, Judge. Ms. Bumpus, when you agreed to represent Mr. Copeland, did you, during the course of the meeting that you had in chambers, did you ask questions of the prosecutors or the judge about what the immunity statute meant or anything like that?
Yes, I asked a lot of questions because I didn't realize until the end of the meeting what was actually going on. That information wasn't given to me.
That's all.
All right. So, Ms. Bumpus, you knew to show up for court that Monday because Mr. Melnick had asked you to be stand-in counsel for Mr. Copeland, right?
Yes, Judge.
Okay. Are you representing that Mr. Melnick simply said that and nothing else? He didn't give you any background about what you were walking into?
Well, what I'm representing is I was given specific instructions, and those instructions were I'm standing in for him. If Mr. Copeland chooses to plead the fifth, which I anticipate he will do, then you won't have to do anything else. If he chooses to testify, we have agreed that he's discharging me.
Okay.
And I made that very clear to everybody multiple times that morning that that's what I was here to do.
Okay. But you had no idea that there was an immunity order in place?
No.
Okay. All right. Does anybody from the defense side have follow-up questions for Ms. Bumpus?
I have just a few, Your Honor.
Okay.
In your cross-examination, you said, quote,
She says she is not going to prosecute him for anything other than that one thing, unquote. What is that one thing?
I can't answer that. I can only assume it would be the unaliving of Donovan Thomas, but those are the words that she chose to use.
When you're saying unaliving of Donovan Thomas, what are you referring to?
I get him being killed.
During cross-examination, Ms. Love asked you about some alleged retaliatory acts. Were those being discussed when Mr. Copeland repeatedly said, I can claim all of this, I can take all of this?
Nothing was being discussed.
What do you mean nothing was being discussed when Mr. Copeland said, I can claim all of this, I can take all of this?
He said that on his own, and that's kind of how the conversation started.
What was the subject matter being referred to when he said, I can claim all of this, I can take all of this?
Donovan Thomas's murder.
Okay. I have no further questions.
Anybody else? While Mr. Steele's making his way up, just so I am clear on this, you're saying that are you saying that in the off-the-record conversation that you, Mr. Copeland, and Ms. Hilton had, that Ms. Hilton told Mr. Copeland that the one thing she would prosecute him for perjury for was if he got on the stand and said that he, Mr. Copeland, was the one who killed Mr. Donovan Thomas?
Yes, Judge.
Okay, and that she would prosecute him for perjury if he said that.
I don't know if she exactly said would, but she was comparing it to things that she wouldn't.
Okay. All right.
So I guess more of a highly possible situation.
That would be the one thing that
Yes,
could
Judge.
get him in criminal
Yes, Judge.
perjury type trouble. Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Steele.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just want to do timing or sequencing you were asked about. When you left Judge Glanville's chambers, after the entire, not bathroom breaks, after Mr. Copeland was removed from the chambers, etc., where did you go, if you remember?
I came and sat right there in the courtroom.
At that point, had you spoken with anybody to alert anyone that there was an ex parte meeting?
No.
Where did next time you saw Mr. Copeland was when? When you left the ex parte meeting, came into the courtroom?
Up here. He was up here.
Testifying where you're sitting?
Yes.
Okay. And then did the jury come in?
Yes.
And did Mr. Copeland testify before the jury?
Yes.
At any time during that moment when Mr. Copeland's testifying in front of the jury, did you tell anybody about this ex parte meeting that you attended?
No.
Is that the first time that you were approached?
Yes.
Ex parte meeting?
Yes.
True?
Yes.
Did anybody, and that's after you were under no restraint, you told the truth?
Yes.
Okay. And that was to myself and the other people you told?
Yes.
True?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right. Mr. Sharp?
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
After the lunch break, do you remember when I raised it before Judge Glanville?
Yes.
Did I do it right away after we spoke?
Yes.
First time the court reconvened?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, and Mr. Sharp, come on up. And speaking of a lunch break, we're way past time for hours, so let's plan to do lunch right after we wrap up this witness.
Ms. Bumpus, were you in the courtroom when Mr. Copeland was called to testify after the ex parte meeting? Were you present in the courtroom?
Yes.
Okay, did you hear the Judge Glanville, did you hear him tell anyone from the defense that an ex parte meeting had occurred?
No.
Did you hear anyone from the state tell the defense on the record that an ex parte meeting had occurred?
No.
Was there any discussion about the substance of said meeting?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? All right, thank you, Ms. Bumpus. You are excused. Let's take our lunch break. Let's come back. It's 20 till 1 right now. Let's come back at 2. Just for my knowledge, does anybody on the defense team have any other witnesses as to this issue?
Not for Mr. Kendrick.
All right. Is the state going to have anybody?
If the court could just, I'm sorry for being obtuse, which exact issue is it that we are addressing? I know it's the June 10th, but what exactly are we addressing? So I can have.
I mean, the defense maintains that there was an unrecorded portion of this ex parte where Brady information was revealed to Ms. Hilton that Ms. Hilton did not then share. So that's our topic.
Yeah, that's what we know.
Sure.